Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 2016 boot camp put on by the Neely Entrepreneurship Center. So this morning, what we're going to talk about is entrepreneurial thinking. Here at the Neely School, we have a very simple definition of entrepreneurship, and that is leveraging opportunity without regard for resources controlled. Essentially, what that means is that you don't have to start a business to be an entrepreneur. You can be in any work context that you want to be, corporation, family business, your own company, your first startup, whatever. What matters is thinking like an entrepreneur. So it's my opinion that success in any of those work contexts is tied to thinking like an entrepreneur. And the reason for that is in today's business world, we face an unprecedented rate of change. Things are just changing so fast, companies can't keep up. For instance, the most extreme example is the healthcare industry, where the rate of knowledge doubling happens every 76 days. Now think about that. Every 76 days, the total amount of healthcare knowledge doubles. There is no way any company or any human being can keep up with that. So as a result, companies are desperate for people who know how to think like entrepreneurs. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means understanding how to find an opportunity and how to assess that opportunity. It has to do with networking. It has to do with understanding how to assess risk. So what we're going to talk about today is what are some of the attributes of entrepreneurial thinking and why they're important. And then how do you develop those? Because not everyone is born thinking like an entrepreneur. However, everyone can think like an entrepreneur. Everyone can learn how to think like an entrepreneur. It's not something that only a few people have, or it's not something where only creative people have. It's something that everyone has the capability to do. So, what are the top 5 attributes of an entrepreneur? Well, first, I would say creativity. Now, a lot of people would immediately say, well, I'm not creative, but you are. You just don't know how to access your creativity when you want to. You've all had moments of creativity, whether it was walking along the beach or waking up in the middle of the night with a great idea, those kinds of things. So we all have that in us. So it's just a matter of figuring out how do I access it and how do I use it and leverage it most effectively. Well, the seed of entrepreneurship is the ability to see things differently. And that's opportunity recognition in a way. Now, whether it's an idea on how to solve a problem, or it's an idea about a new process, or it's a way to, sorry, I'm at home, so we'll probably be interrupted by both my dogs and my parrot, so just be prepared. I should have mentioned that up front. So whether it's new products or new processes, new policies, new structures, these are things that people do every day in their jobs, but they're also very entrepreneurial. Anytime you improve something and it becomes more beneficial to the corporation or to other people, that's entrepreneurial. That's entrepreneurship. So a lot of people have this uncanny knack to see holes in the marketplace and drive innovations that fill those holes. Now, not all of us can do that on a grand scale, but all of us do that every day. We actually have a lot of experience with it. You have a lot of experience with it in your life so far. You've had to solve problems. You've had to do innovative things in order to get into college. You've had to, and believe me, you've been very inventive and innovative when it came to convincing your parents to buy that new car or whatever it is that you were trying to convince them to get for you at whatever point in your life. So we all have that capability. So it's not essential for success to be super creative or to find great solutions to world problems. But one of the things that is fundamental is the mental skill to be able to turn that creativity on and off as you need it. And everyone can do this. Everyone can develop the ability to think creatively when they need to and when they want to. So begin to practice that. Begin to practice sitting down with your computer, with a notebook, a moleskin, whatever, and start thinking about ideas, problems that you have ideas about how to solve and that sort of thing. And as you get more and more into practice with that, you'll begin to see that it's not very hard, actually. There are solutions all around us. Yes, there are problems all around us, but there are also solutions all around us. And seeing your way through to find those is the essence of opportunity recognition. Now, obviously, there are other things that go into that in terms of understanding if that's just a good idea or if it can be turned into a real business opportunity. But we have frameworks that can walk you through that and can make that happen. So as you work your way through the Neely Business School or any other part of your life, keep in mind that creativity is something you keep with you all the time. It's something that you develop and you feed. This is why we have the arts. This is why we have music. This is why we have great literature and painting and dance, because those are the kinds of things that help fill us up and help our creativity and get us out of our day-to-day ruts. Okay, so what's the second predictor or the second element of entrepreneurial thinking? Well, that is what I call suspicion of predictors. Now, what does that mean? Well, entrepreneurs tend not to necessarily be tied to data like a lot of other corporations are, or people are, or scientists and so forth. Not that that's a bad thing. Being tied to data is a very good thing, and understanding how to use data is very important. But data is not the sole predictor of an outcome. And this is something that entrepreneurial thinking it takes to sort of an art. Inc. magazine recently asked the 500 top entrepreneurial companies that they had identified in the United States how much data the CEOs used before they started their company. And what was interesting is 60% of the CEOs of those Inc. 500 companies didn't have a business plan when they started the company, and only 12% had done any market research. This is because they believed that they had seen an opportunity, that they had so much faith in, that their entrepreneurial mindset told them this is the solution, that they went ahead and started that company and obviously grew it to be a pretty good-sized company based on their belief that they knew what was right. And sometimes data will tell you no, and in many times data will give you, in fact, the use of data almost always is used to say no. Very seldom is it used to find a yes answer. So this is one of the reasons why corporations many times lose their entrepreneurial spark, because they begin to operate more and more on data analysis. And really what happens, the more and more data that's built up, the more and more reasons that appear to say no to new ideas, new products, new services. So I'm not saying don't use data. I'm not saying data is not important. It's very important. But it's only one thing that you use in your analysis of when you want to start a company. And many times you have to believe in your own self. You have to believe in what your customers are telling you, or your potential customers. And sometimes you just have to ignore the data and move on. The third aspect of the entrepreneurial mindset is comfort with uncertainty. Now, this is something in my classes that I tell my students all the time, and if any of you are in the room, you'll certainly recognize this, is I tell them that my class is all about ambiguity and uncertainty. I try to keep them off balance as much as possible, because that's the way it is in the real world. You don't get a syllabus when you get your job. You don't get a syllabus that says this is how you get a raise and a promotion. You have to figure that out, and you're pretty much on your own, and you have a whole lot of other people out there who are figuring it out with you, and some of them are going to be your main competitors. So you have to be comfortable in an environment of ambiguity and uncertainty. And this is one of the things that you can develop as part of your entrepreneurial mindset. It's similar in a way to the distrust of prediction and analysis, because when you're in that world of prediction and analysis, that's where uncertainty rules. You know, the hardest thing for companies to do is predict the future, but that's what you're doing all the time, especially as an entrepreneur. So it's, in a way, I think that uncertainty is kind of the essence of entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs are comfortable existing in the space between a raw idea and a successful product. That's a very ambiguous space, but it's the space that's so much fun. It's the space where a lot of creativity comes into play. And it's the space where there's not a lot of data to begin with. This is one of the reasons why data and using it sometimes is an issue, because for new ideas, new products, new services that you come up with, there's not a lot of data out there. So that space between raw product and successful product, that's where entrepreneurs exist, and that's where success many times is built and comes from. The fourth one, openness to experimentation. Well, this is something that is absolutely essential to the entrepreneurial mindset. You have to be comfortable going beyond educated trial and error. You have to have the ability to experiment with products, processes, and outcomes. And that comes from a very basic human instinct that we all have, which is curiosity. We all are curious about things. And this is one of the top things that entrepreneurs have to be, is curious, to go in and tinker with things, take things apart, figure out what makes them work, figure out why people use them or don't use them, and then fix that. What caused this problem? How can we make this better? So the key element of curiosity then is appreciating the experimental. And the experimental many times can be pretty predictive. So, you get in there, you learn things, and you discover what comes out of that. So when results fall nicely within a certain range, we move on to our experimental results fall within a certain range, we kind of move on to the next step. But for entrepreneurs who are bringing something new and novel to the marketplace, experimentation can be truly experimental. And this is why Lean Startup exists, which you probably heard of. Steve Blank sort of invented it, and Eric Ries wrote a book about it that sort of popularized it, but it's been around for a really long time. And the whole idea is you build your product or service to about 80% done or less, and then you put it out there for people to react to, and you get their feedback, and you iterate very quickly to make those changes. And when you've done that, generally, you find that you're able to refine your product and make it more and more acceptable to the marketplace. So experimentation can sort of remove expectations, and the results can help lead you in new directions. And that's an attribute of the truly entrepreneurial mind, where you let experimentation move you in new directions that you maybe hadn't thought of before, but you let the experimentation lead you, not your expectations of what you thought would happen, which is a great downfall of many companies, where ego comes into play and the founder or the entrepreneur believes that they're so right that they don't let experimentation lead them, and they let their ego lead them. And that's probably one of the number one things that causes failure. And then the last piece that I want to talk about in terms of the entrepreneurial mindset is humility. One of the things that, and this comes directly from what I just said about egos, one of the biggest killers of new companies and corporations for that matter is ego. People let their egos get in the way of what's best for the company, what their customers are actually wanting, and they believe that the way they do it and the way they think about it is best. This is why you need a diverse group of people from many different kinds of fields and backgrounds working together, so that you get a sense of the whole 360-degree picture of what your product and service is about, rather than just what your own mind is telling you. Ego between founders or ego between workmates is one of the most destructive things that can happen in a company. When you're the very best entrepreneurs are constantly generating and promoting new ideas and their own ideas, but they think and act collaboratively and are staunchly solutions focused. That's what I mean about humility. Yes, you're coming up with great ideas all the time, but in order to bring those ideas to fruition, you have to think and act collaboratively, and that is a key element of the entrepreneurial mind, and being solutions focused, not my way or the highway focused, but finding those solutions that work best for your customers. Okay, so now that we've talked a little bit about the entrepreneurial mind and what elements sort of make that up, how do you develop that? How do you go about actually developing the entrepreneurial mind? Well, I'm just going to give you very quickly about 15 steps to do that, all right? So it's going to be pretty quick because I don't want to keep you too long. By the way, if you have questions for today, for what we're talking about today, please let Lynn know or email them to Lynn, and then she'll forward them to me, and I'll be happy to answer them, through email. All right. So how do you develop entrepreneurial thinking? Well, first things you must do. Let me just sort of give you these in order. Get in the practice of clearing your mind and sort of meditating in a way about whatever the problem might be. But first, clear your mind. Sit still for a bit, relax, close your eyes, maybe listen to some music that relaxes you. And once you feel relaxed, then just begin to sort of think about the problem without all the noise in your life. I mean, the noise to signal ratio in our lives today is immense. It's very hard to find a quiet space to think about your business, your future, what you want to do. And I think the first step towards that, and oftentimes towards creativity, is finding that quiet space. Meditation is a wonderful way to do that. There are plenty of other ways to do it, but find the ability in yourself to sort of find that quiet spot where you can begin to think about things. The other is be a dead time learner. Well, what does that mean? That means when you have downtime, you're in the car, you're on a long airplane trip, you're just sitting there thinking about things before you go to sleep, or you're vacuuming or whatever it may be, instead of distracting yourself with your phone or with gaming or something like that, do something that's going to be new to you. Do something that's going to inspire you a little bit, that's going to trigger some of that excitement in your mind about what possibilities are out there. What are the things that you can do with your life that may be things you hadn't thought about before? Research new jobs. Research things that are going to happen as artificial intelligence becomes more and more prevalent and destroys more and more jobs, because those things are going to happen. So think about those things. Think creatively about how you're going to react to those things, because those will trigger some really interesting thoughts about what kind of future you're going to have, what's going to fit into that future in terms of work, and the kinds of work that are going to be important in that future. And that will open up a lot of possibilities for you. Third, get a sheet of paper and start writing down your goals, or better, draw your goals, or sit down in front of a phone like I am right now and videotape your goals for yourself, or to share with people that you care about and you respect. And then once you have your goals, sort of put them in a mind map. Now that can be done in many ways. There's actually a software that lets you build a mind map. You can clip things out of books and magazines and put them on a wall and add to it as time goes on. But kind of get a three-dimensional view of what your goals are. It's a very powerful way to sort of visualize what it is that you want to accomplish. And as you do it, the really important part is, as you do it, you'll discover a lot of things you hadn't thought about around those goals. You'll discover new ways to accomplish them. You'll discover new goals. You'll discover goals you hadn't thought of before. It's a great way to sort of open up your brain to the possibilities out there. Fourth, think in terms of large quantities of ideas, because that's what it takes. I've told my students that I keep a little red book that I've had for years that I have written hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of ideas in. And not that they're all good, many of them are completely horrible. But sometimes what happens is one idea that was only mediocre suddenly matches with an idea you had a couple of years ago and an idea that you have today, and those three come together to create something entirely new. In fact, that's exactly how my last company got created, is 4 ideas that had been around for a long time suddenly coalesced in a new way because new data, new information came in that allowed me to think about that in a new way and put those together. Spend time with people outside your profession. This is really important. Don't stick to your silo. Read everything you can about everything. Talk to people who do different things than you. Hear what they're thinking about. Hear what problems they're facing. You will be amazed at how oftentimes people who are doing completely different things from you are actually doing things in a kind of similar way, but in a completely different field. And that can open up some really interesting ways of thinking for you about, they do it that way over here. Maybe if I applied what they know to what I know, I'll find some new and interesting solutions to problems. Encourage your brain to make connections among seemingly dissimilar things. This is an old trick for coming up with entrepreneurial ideas. So like let's take ice cream and salt. All right, what can I do with those two things that might be interesting to make a new product? Well, that's how salted caramel came about, and it became incredibly powerful new food in the marketplace. So opposites are very interesting to work with. Dissimilar products and ideas are interesting to work with. Bringing them together and seeing how they might work and playing with them and so forth can be a very interesting exercise. Observe nature. Many of the systems that we have in real life came from nature. Many of the successful drugs that are out there came straight out of nature because nature makes these things. So the systems, the processes, and the products that we're trying to create many times already exist there. So it's good to get out and to understand nature, to look at it, to value it, and see how the hierarchies and the boundaries and the mechanisms for correcting itself work. That can be very important, particularly when you apply that to corporate structures. Each day for a week, and I like this one, each day for a week, do one of the following. Read a magazine you've never read before, try a new restaurant or eat something you've never eaten before, go to work using a different route, that's always a good one, go to an art show or museum and imagine yourself creating one of the art objects that you like, look at a procedure that you follow at work that irritates you and think about how you can do that better and make yourself more comfortable with it. Think about ways that your own work products could be better, and then get the okay from your boss to make changes. So try one of those, each day for one each for each day of the week, and see what happens. I think you'll be surprised. Your mind will kind of be in a new place. It's very refreshing. It's also a great way to reset your brain a little bit. It's sort of like a reboot to go in and do all these different things and get yourself out of the same old. It's a good way to kind of find new things that interest you. Develop your mind to think entrepreneurially by reading, observing, asking questions, listening, and contemplating all the things around you, your work, your life, your relationships, all of those things. Read about how other successful entrepreneurs got started. Watch behavioral patterns of successful entrepreneurs. Even if you can only do that on YouTube or on television or with TED Talks, look at people like that. See what they do. Listen to how they work and what their routines are. Talk directly to entrepreneurs and other meaningful leaders in your life and listen to their answers, take notes, and as you come up with good ideas, ask yourself if they would make good businesses. And this is sort of a framework, a very simple one, for getting your first business ideas. Then remember, speaking of business ideas, there's no such thing as bad ideas. There's only poorly executed ones. Let's think about it. Pet Rock, Beanie Babies. I don't know if you remember those things, but my goodness, they were amazingly popular, but no one really knows why. Were they great ideas? Not really. But were they successful? Absolutely, because they were executed in a great way, and the timing happened to be right. Avoid looking around too much at what your competitors are doing. Competitors are not what you should be interested in. Your customers should be what you're interested in, and the solutions for your customers. Remember that looking at competitors will only dilute your own ideas, to do things creatively, you really need to generate that from your own thoughts, not from others. It's good to look at what they're doing, but don't take that too much to heart. Chart your own path as much as possible so that you're creating new kinds of solutions, and that's where your competitive edge is going to come from. Realize that you are a brand. As a human being, you are a brand, and that's going to become more important because right now 34% of all American workers are on 1099s. That means they're independent contractors, they're entrepreneurs, whether they want to be or not. By 2020, that'll be 40%. That's 65 million people who will be entrepreneurs, forced to be entrepreneurs in the United States. Many of them want to be, but the fact of the matter is, at some point in your career, you will have to be entrepreneurial. So this thinking you're a brand, realize you are a brand, and prepare yourself as a brand. Write your own ad copy. Figure out what kind of product and services you are, what problems you solve, and what kinds of solutions and ideas and creativity and innovation you bring to the table, regardless of your work context. And lastly, remember that opportunities exist everywhere. Seriously, there are opportunities all around us. We just don't see them because we're not actively looking in places that we don't just normally go. That's why you want to think about new magazines, new foods, those kinds of things, to break your brain out of those handcuffs that they're in. Staying open and creative allows for new product ideas, new ways to market and sell, new partnerships, and the creation of even more products and services. So remain open. Think about your life, think about your work in ways that will jog you out of your day-to-day rut. And hopefully this conversation has helped you begin to understand the entrepreneurial mindset a little bit better. It is something that everyone has. It's something everyone can develop. Being an entrepreneur is not magic. Just look around you. Just look around Fort Worth. Look at all of the people who are entrepreneurial. Not all of them are Steve Zuckerberg or Michael Dell. They are just normal people who had an idea for a business and started it. Doctors are entrepreneurial. Lawyers are entrepreneurial. The dry cleaner is entrepreneurial. All the restaurants around you are entrepreneurial. So remember that. Remember, entrepreneurship is not a rare thing. It is a very common thing. In the 19th century, almost everyone in America was an entrepreneur. The Industrial Revolution changed that, and when urbanization came about, and then more and more people went to work for corporations because a salary was a safe thing. Well, today, the odds of being laid off from your job or losing your job and starting a company and potentially going out of business within 5 years are almost exactly the same. It's about 50%. So keep that in mind, that being an entrepreneur is many times the safest thing you can do. And knowing, all of my animals are putting an exclamation point on this. So what I will say is sometimes understanding, all right. Sometimes understanding how to be entrepreneurial and how to think like an entrepreneur is the least risky thing you can do. All right. Thank you all very much. Bye-bye.